welcome to Remade, the show about movies and their remakes. And this time we're doing a little bit of an interesting show. We're not doing two of the same named film, we're doing two interpretations of the same plotline. We're going to talk about Yojimbo and A Fistful of Dollars. So let's start with Yojimbo. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah. So Yojimbo, first of all, I gotta say, Akira Kurosawa is probably my favorite director of all time. And he's just so good with all of his shots, the way things move within the frame. And honestly, I'm a bit of a sucker for samurai stuff. And Yojimbo definitely hit all those points for me. It's got some great shots, it's got some great samurai themes and a great aesthetic overall. And the funny thing is I saw Yojimbo after I saw A Fistful of Dollars. So I really got to compare the two when I was watching Yojimbo. And the first thing that really struck me is the character of Yojimbo, because I really like his character. Mm-hmm. He's just so, he's an anti-hero, not quite the same anti-hero as the one in Fistful of Dollars. Instead of not caring in a very broody, dark way, he doesn't care in a very more flamboyant, kind of chaotic and almost kind of silly way.
Yeah, he definitely has more of a sense of humor than Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. He's cracking jokes and making fun of the townspeople instead of cool remarks. There's the scene where he proves himself to the one gang by killing the men and tells the coffin maker to make 2 coffins, and then comes back and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should have said 3." But when Clint Eastwood says, make 3 coffins, and then comes back and says, "My mistake, 4," it comes across more like a bravado, braggadocious line than it does a joke, which is how it feels to me in Yojimbo. And that's what I think is so interesting about the differences in them. I agree with what you say about Kurosawa. I think his shot composition really stands out in Yojimbo. There's so many really far depth of fields and deep focuses. There's some great framing in the dialogue scenes where 2 characters are back to back, or there's 3 characters in different depths of field and it's focused on all of them as if they were one line. I think that's really great. But overall, I think Yojimbo has a bit more heart to it than Fistful of Dollars, and I don't know if you agree with me there, but for me, it's really, you get to see a lot more about every character in the movie, whereas Fistful of Dollars, you only really learn about one of the crime families and not about both of them, really. But I think Yojimbo spends a lot more time, and it isn't a longer film, but it feels like a longer film because it takes so much more time to get in depth, but I think it just has a bit more soul. But
that's interesting, because I always considered Fistful of Dollars a movie that's pretty full of soul and heart, and one thing that I did like a bit more in Fistful of Dollars than I liked in Yojimbo is the treatment of the family that the hero saves. Mm-hmm. I feel that's a lot more better set up in Fistful of Dollars, where he's actually sees the father, sees the child before, and knows about the mother from basically in the first moments where he enters the village. Whereas in Yojimbo, it's kind of introduced a lot later in the film, and it's kind of just, at that point, it kind of feels a bit tacked on just to give him an excuse to have a heart. But the character in Fistful of Dollars, you can really feel that it's built up to, and when it's finally revealed, and when he finally makes the selfless decision to save the family, then it really feels a lot more rewarding, I think, in Fistful of Dollars. So that's one of the things I feel like is treated a bit better in that movie.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. I think the Man with No Name's motivation in both of the films, we got Yojimbo and we've got, I guess, Gringo or Americano. They call him all sorts of names. Blondie. Yeah, we'll say Blondie because it continues through. But Yojimbo appears in the film, and the reason he decides to go to the town is because he sees the father and the son arguing, and the son's like, "I'm gonna go be a gambler," and the father's like, "What's wrong with being a farmer?" And he's like, "I want to make big money." And Yojimbo hears that there's a bunch of trouble in the town and it's a disgrace, and so he goes to like free the town from the trouble. Whereas Blondie sees the family with
money.
the separated child, and for me that's like his drive throughout the entire film. It feels like that because he says something. It's almost like a little hint about his background, about I knew somebody like that once who had their mother or wife stolen away.
He does mention that in the film, like explicitly, but also definitely, you definitely get the feeling in Fistful of Dollars that he is mostly pretty selfish and mostly very interested in money, like especially when he starts like jumping back and forth between families to just increase his profits, and that was definitely a very unique thing, especially for American cinemas, to just see a hero in a Western who was just so self-interested. But also, there are some things that the main character of Yojimbo does that I feel like the main character, the Blondie, would not. Like, there's this one scene that I particularly really like, which is really well shot also, where basically the two families are about to go fight, and then Yojimbo's like, nah, I'm just gonna hang up on the top of this tower
and laugh
and watch you guys fight. And then he watches, and the two sides are just way too scared to fight each other, and it's absolutely hilarious. And so then you kind of get the feeling maybe it's not all about the money; it's just kind of showing these guys their place.
Yeah.
And so the main character of Yojimbo is definitely a man of more like maybe ideals, and that definitely goes into the whole samurai.
Yeah, because he's a Ronin, whereas Blondie is just a man. He's not really driven by anything other than he wants to be. Whereas as a Ronin, Yojimbo has a code of honor that he has to uphold, and he does.
It's kind of an interesting thing because there is a lot of ultimate overlap between Westerns and samurai films. A lot of Akira Kurosawa films were remade as Westerns. This is one of them. But the ideas are a bit different. Like the whole idea of the Western is that they are like the cowboy, that Western gunslinger is like a man of the wild, but the world is slowly becoming more civilized and he is trying to adapt to that. But meanwhile, like the Ronin, the samurai, used to be part of like a lot of order and civilization, but then was cast out into the wild and is dealing with that. So it's almost a bit of an inverse.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make, and I think that it's interesting to me that every kind of culture, every region of the world has their own kind of stories like this, like the samurai story or the Western, or even like the romance, like Night Tale of a traveling hero who comes in and saves the day for differing reasons. But it's like we all have a foundational mythos about our culture, and we all explore it in different ways. And I think it's really up to us what our preference is.
Yes. All right, Wade, before we wrap up, just maybe quickly, which movie did you like better? I think we can both admit they're both pretty good, but which one did you prefer?
I think I personally enjoy Yojimbo better. I think that the characters are more interesting. Even the henchmen have more character. Like there's the giant with the hammer and there's the idiot, and there's more character, but I think also in terms of direction, there's a lot more interesting things being done with the camera. And I am a huge Leone fan, but I think Fistful of Dollars is my least favorite Leone film, so.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you on that. I also love Sergio Leone, and I did really enjoy watching Fistful of Dollars, and I do appreciate the little things that it gets right, but ultimately, you can't beat Kurosawa.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah, okay, and that's all we have to say, so go check them out, Yojimbo and A Fistful of Dollars. Thanks for watching.